Take a look at this. The announcement of former Attorney General Pam Bondi's departure is barely 24 hours old, and her portrait has already been found in the trash bins of the Department of Justice. And as Donald Trump gets more and more anxious about his splintering base and declining poll numbers, more Trump cabinet officials could actually find their portraits in the trash can as well. The Atlantic is reporting that Pam Bondi's firing is unlikely to be the last. In part, the reporting suggests cabinet secretaries and other senior administration officials were anxiously eyeing their phones, wondering whether they'd be next. Several people familiar with the White House's plans told us that there are active discussions about others leaving the administration, including FBI Director Kash Patel, Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll, and Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer. It is a sudden return to the chaos of his first term. The Atlantic adds that, quote, Trump had been reluctant to get rid of any of his top lieutenants, viewing firings as a concession to the Democrats and the media. Even in the past few months, there had been an edict that no cabinet officials would be removed prior to the midterms, though a series of dismissals were planned for after Election Day. But the president's declining support since he launched the Iran war has changed the political calculus. The odds of confirming replacements, advisors know, are only growing longer. One person close to the White House told us that Trump was buoyed by the reaction to his decision to remove former Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and that it made him more likely to move ahead with Bondi. I want to bring into the conversation staff writer for The Atlantic, Sarah Fitzpatrick, and former assistant special agent in charge at the FBI and national security intelligence analyst Michael Feinberg. It's good to have both of you with us. Sarah, this is an incredible piece of reporting. Just talk to us a little bit about Trump's willingness to clean house, and what's the strategy here? Why specific people, even people like Pam Bondi, who on the surface of it appear to be doing his bidding war? She had weaponized the Department of Justice and gone after his political enemies the way he wanted.
Look, I think what we're seeing here is a real change in calculus. We're seeing a White House finally respond in some ways to the political reality that often they're able to kind of insulate themselves from. We're seeing and understanding that this may be the last chance. And I'm told that there is public polling that has recently made its way into the West Wing and really affirmed that the Republicans may not fully be in charge of Congress come this fall. And so I think we're seeing a very reactionary attempt to do everything all at once and try and get all the bad news out there so that they can make new plans. But this is, I would say, a very live ball that has changed in the last week. Yes, there have been discussions for many months, but the decision to make this change and to kind of do it all at once, and we're anticipating more firings next week and in the coming weeks, that is a very recent development, and it's a White House that is not feeling confident right now.
Yeah, it's an embattled White House, and even more dangerous that it's coming in the middle of a war. Let me drill down on this, Sarah. You write this specifically about Pam Bondi's firing. Bondi did everything right, or at least everything Trump asked her to do, but in the end, it was not enough. For Trump and for his succession of attorneys general, it is almost never enough. In some ways, Bondi's official service to Trump seemed preordained to end the way it did, with a singular moment of crystalline humiliation after weeks of low-grade indignities. Bondi was not former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. She would not recuse herself. She would not draw lines. She would not do anything other than loyalty and serve the president, I should say, loyally. Can anyone survive serving this president if loyalty is the ultimate test? You have Kash Patel out there. You've got Pete Hegseth. All of these people seem to be in very difficult situations after years of being subservient and loyal to Trump.
I think what you see is, and as one person very close to the White House told me yesterday, that the president has a vision that he is ultimately the head of the Department of Justice, and that the AG is the person whose job it is to enforce his goals, his asks. And I think that really is a very different view than most prosecutors, most civil servants have who go into government, especially in the post-Watergate norms in which most people working at the Department of Justice view themselves as being separate from the president. They view themselves as serving the public and the American people and ultimately the Constitution. And so I think, yes, there has always been, even the most loyal servants ultimately are going to come up against the Constitution. They're going to come up against a workforce that is used to following the law, following what is demanded. And I think what we're seeing now in some ways is something that was of Trump's own design, because the Justice Department, I cannot emphasize this enough, there are so few people left there. There has been such a huge exodus that for the first time, this department has had to recruit for attorneys on X, on social media. That has never really had to happen before because these were such prized jobs. And you're seeing people making mistakes, people making errors, because they don't have the talent pool, they don't have the expertise, and they don't have the reps. So I think this was an inevitable conclusion, and it is one that has put our justice system in a very, very difficult place.
Michael, Sarah reported that Todd Blanche is eager to make his tenure as the acting attorney general permanent. Let me play for you and our viewers what he said on Fox just last night. Take a listen to this.
Now, the Epstein files, you'd agree, not handled well?
And I don't, first of all, I have never heard President Trump say that the Attorney General that anything that happened to her had anything to do with the Epstein files. And so, look, the Epstein files has been a saga that's lasted for the past year. And so I think that to the extent that the Epstein files was a part of the past year of this Justice Department, should not be a part of anything going forward. When President Trump said, let's release the Epstein files, and the law was passed that allowed us to legally do it, we did it.
Okay. I'm not sure you totally get what people feel about that.
That might be the truest thing Jesse Waters has ever said, right? Because on one hand, the base of MAGA that thought that Donald Trump was going to release the Epstein files are angry about the Epstein files. Is Todd Blanche any more likely than Pam Bondi to be able to balance the tension between not angering that base that demands more accountability on the Epstein files or alienating Donald Trump on Epstein?
There's an old Winston Churchill saying about dictators riding to and fro on tigers that they dare not dismount for fear of getting eaten. And that's what we're seeing now with everybody who sacrificed their integrity for a senior position with the Trump administration. Pam Bondi, just like the president and just like all the other supporters throughout the campaign, did every single thing she could to light a fire among their supporters, demanding more action on the Epstein files. And it eventually came back to burn her herself. And there is no reason to think that Todd Blanche will escape that same fate. And I just point out, in the interview you just referred to that you just ran, Todd Blanche is either dissembling on purpose or is not mentally competent enough and intelligent enough to serve as the Attorney General of the United States. Nothing he said had the ring of truth to it. And if anyone in the public or in Congress thinks that they are going to get a better servant of the Constitution and the rule of law in Todd Blanche than they did in Pam Bondi, I would like to have access to whatever drugs they have access to. It's insane.